Imagine never leaving a 6 by 8 foot cell for weeks at a time. You do not get to see sunlight or get to interact with others. You are alone with your thoughts and with lack of stimulation. This is the perfect combination for psychosis. Hello, my name is Genesis Sierra, and today I want to convince you that solitary confinement is detrimental. Solitary confinement is detrimental because it affects the mental state of prisoners, it's inhumane, and it's ineffective. Hopefully, by the end of my speech, you will understand the inhumanity of social confinement and advocate for it to end. It is known to the general public that prison is one of the harshest environments one can go to. You are isolated from society, you're put into small rooms with other criminals, and have your daily activities monitored and planned for you. The food that is provided is unpleasant, it's not appetizing, and it's in the hands of other prisoners. It is also known that the guards and staff of these prisons often treat the prisoners poorly. However, when put in solitary confinement, that treatment often becomes inhumane, and the prisoners in solitary confinement are subject to starvation and unsanitary conditions. They spend almost 23 hours in these ridiculously small cells, not only isolates them from other inmates, but it also isolates them from any superiors. This allows guards to treat them however they'd like. The prisoners' food is often never delivered or thrown on the floor, leading to weight loss and even starvation. Additionally, the prisoners do not get to bathe often, and their toilets often never work, leaving them with their own excrements because they have nowhere else to use the bathroom. Their letters and requests for phone calls are also thrown out and never delivered, further cutting off their communication to the outside world. Counter-arguments state that this loss of privilege does more good than harm. This provides the prisoners with a sort of reference to what life would be like without these privileges and how much better life would be if they worked to get these privileges back. And according to several correctional websites, the mental and physical well-being of the inmate is constantly monitored. However, this may not be the case for everyone, and it only may be the case for very few inmates. According to Chandra Bozelko, she provides her experiences with solitary confinement in full detail. Her experience was not only lack of privileges, but also a lack of humanity. She says in her article in The Guardian, "I did shrink. One time when the commanding officer chucked the tray, I ate about 3 vegetables from the mush and then was mortified by behavior that no one would ever see. She was often left with little choice and acted in ways that a human should not have to act in order to get nourishment." In addition to being inhumane, solitary confinement is psychological torture. It affects the way inmates trust, it produces anxiety, and in many cases it causes psychosis. Of course, the effect of solitary confinement on the mind depends on the person, the duration, and specific conditions. However, being held in isolation can overfire stress hormones like cortisol that can drastically change the hippocampus. This area of the brain is responsible for emotions, memory, and the autonomic nervous system. It controls how we translate our senses to the rest of our brain and our relationship to outside space. This effect can make some people uncalibrated with the rest of the world, and many people who have spent several years often in solitary confinement have basically been reprogrammed. Additionally, suicide occurs disproportionately more often in these segregated units than in any other unit in prison. Many may dismiss these effects by arguing that the outside population must have a bigger understanding before making these conclusions. They may also argue that there is a twisted understanding of solitary confinement. According to Anthony Gangi, who worked in corrections for over 15 years, there needs to be a maintained order, and in order to make this order, the overly aggressive or inmates who don't listen have to be put away from the population. However, the effects of solitary confinement does not only stay in prison, and those who are released have a rightful say in the processes used to maintain order, because a lot of these prisoners will not spend their entire lives in prison. Dolores Canals, who spent 20 years in prison and over a year in solitary confinement. She says that for her, her sense of space is permanently damaged and altered. She also says that you should see my apartment. When I first moved in, I couldn't stand not being able to see the door. Although she is aware of her physical freedom, her mind is still in that 6 by 8 foot cell. In conclusion, solitary confinement leads to the mistreatment of inmates, permanently alters their mind, and is overall ineffective. Inmates are starved and left in wretched conditions. They are also tortured psychologically without stimulation and human interactions. And as humans, we need other humans and other people to be able to cope with our situations. It is also not guaranteed that the inmates won't reoffend. As an aspiring clinical psychologist, I'm worried for the mental health and well-being of the inmates who are kept alone for weeks, months, and even years at a time in devastating conditions. To the outside world, these inmates deserve all the punishment they can get. I would like to remind you and the public that many inmates are not in prison for major offenses and are forced into isolation, which leaves them with permanent damage, but not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. Human beings should be treated like human beings, nothing else. Thank you.